Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So, the Nintendo Switch has a massive library of games and some really high quality ones at that. I mean, you got your Mario's, Pokemon games, you got Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, Metroid, and the list just kind of goes on and on. But really, it goes well beyond that, because there's also a lot of games that are kind of hidden away on the Nintendo eShop. As good as the Nintendo Switch is, their eShop can be a little bit of a mess, and it can be a little difficult finding some of the best games available on the Nintendo Switch. So that's why today we will be taking a look at 15 hidden gems available on the Nintendo Switch. Now, I have made several videos like this in the past, which actually has completely different games, so make sure to go check those ones out as well. But with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into things. And the first game here, I have Flynn, Son of Crimson. And the first thing that's really going to stand out with this game is its beautiful 2D pixel art. This game is quite a looker, and that's not just with its characters, but also its varied environments to keep things interesting level to level. Now, that is something about this game, though. It was originally advertised as being a Metroidvania game, but instead it ended up being an action platformer with linear levels, though it does have some backtracking as you gain new abilities. This does work very well in a game like this, though, and not just because it's pretty to look at, but it's also because it's quite simply fun to play. The combat in this game may be simple, but it's also fun at the same time. With a roll, you have melee combat, and then you also have your more ranged attacks. Because the controls are so responsive in this game, it's always a joy to play through. And then, on top of that, you do have some clever puzzles along the way with several fun boss fights as well. Now, for you Pokemon fans out there that might be looking for a fresh spin on the monster collecting games, you might want to check out Nexomon Extinction. This is a game that is actually quite surprising in how good it actually is. Obviously, you can kind of see what Nexomon was inspired by, but at the same time, it does have some interesting takes on this genre. This is a much more open-ended game with you really just being able to collect a lot of the monsters right out of the gate. It can also be a little bit more challenging than you might expect, and even the trainers, they do scale along with you. So you're just never really breezing through this game, and you can't really just take one monster and just wipe an entire party. They do have a stamina meter on here that makes you change your strategy quite frequently. Instead of you being able to use your most powerful attack over and over again, this will quickly deplete your stamina, which is a nice little design. And speaking of design, this game does look good with that classic art style, and even the animations look nice. For that matter, one of the most important things for a game like this is the monster designs, and well, I'm happy to say that Nexomon does have some interesting and creative designs in that regard. If you ever wanted to play a game where you play as a goose that kills everything in its path, well, I got something for you here, being Mighty Goose. Now, this is a fast and frantic run and gunner with just pure chaos throughout every level. The goal of the game is to basically destroy every enemy in your path with lots of enemies to defeat, and you do have a range of weapons to keep all of this interesting. The controls itself does feel tight and responsive, and even though this isn't necessarily the most complex game in the world, it is a blast to play through. You can also get different companions in this game that has their own unique abilities, which does give it a little extra layer of strategy as well. And if you grow tired of some of the weapons in this game, well, they do also have vehicular combat as well. Now, this game isn't overly challenging, and it's not necessarily all that long, and you can beat this in a couple of hours, really. But like I said before, this game is a lot of fun to play through. If Zelda, Hollow Knight, and Dark Souls all kind of came together and had a baby and was then turned into a 3D platformer, well, you would have Blue Fire. Blue Fire is kind of a game that takes a lot of mechanics from popular franchises, and that might sound messy on paper, but there's really a lot to like here. Blue Fire does do a good job with its exploration and atmosphere. It pays a lot of homage to games like Zelda with some different references, but I think that what makes this game kind of special in its own way is its precision platforming. Yes, it does have combat in this game as well, and you have parry attacks, and you can kind of use your movement abilities to dance around your foes, but it's the platforming here that I think what truly shines in this game. You have pretty much all of the mechanics that you want in a 3D platformer like this. You have wall run, you have triple jump, double dash, and then when you combine all of that into a precision, challenging 3D platformer, I think fans of the genre and classic 3D platformers will really come away liking a game like Blue Fire. It may not always be perfect, and its combat isn't necessarily extraordinary or anything, but I think that this is one of the better 3D platformers that you can play right now on the Nintendo Switch. Horus is probably one of the most criminally overlooked games out right now. I know the game industry is filled with a lot of puzzle platformers, but Horus is just a little bit different. This game does start off a little slow as it's heavily story-driven for its first hour or so. You don't usually see that in platforming games, and it might throw some fans off, but it's well worth the time investment, and you should absolutely stick with this game because not only does it have a good story that is emotionally driven, and it can also be humorous as well, but it's also just a flat-out good puzzle platformer. This game will gradually open up and get more and more difficult as time goes on, with more abilities that not only keeps the game from growing repetitive, but it also grows in challenge as well. This game will test your 2D platforming skills, but whether you like a good story or puzzle platformers, Horus is a must-play game. If you grew up during the golden era of 3D collectathon platformers, playing games such as Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, then Demon Turf is an interesting one. Demon Turf very much is a Nintendo 64-esque 3D collectathon platformer, and I mean that in the best possible way. It has all the right mechanics, a great level design, various abilities to unlock, and it also has fun exploration, which is absolutely needed in a genre like this as you try to find the hidden collectibles throughout the levels. In Demon Turf, you will have to collect batteries throughout each level to advance to the next stage, and there are 4 different turfs throughout the game to explore. What I will say about this game, though, is that even though it does share a lot in common with maybe some popular 3D platformers out there, it's actually quite unique in a couple of different aspects. One being very obviously its art style, using 2D sprites in a 3D world. This art style actually looks fantastic in motion. Then the other thing that kind of sets this game apart is actually in how they handle its checkpoint system. So basically in this game, you have 3 checkpoints that you can actually set yourself throughout the level. Now, Ori and the Blind Forest does something like this, but here with a 3D platformer, it's really interesting, as really this game can be challenging, especially if you don't set your checkpoints correctly. So this does add a little strategy to its already well-designed levels. Now, in terms of its combat, I wouldn't say that it excels in that regard, but I don't really think 3D platformers as a whole is usually great when it comes to that, and thankfully with its platforming, that's where it truly shines. There's been a lot of popular rhythm games over the years, such as Guitar Hero, you have Rock Band, Beat Saber, and the list kind of goes on, but here we have a little game where you play as a metal beetle by the name of Thumper. And this game really is like nothing else. It's kind of abstract, I would say, to an extent. They explain this as a violent rhythm game, and you'll kind of understand that as you play it because there is a physicality to it. On one side of things, it's pretty simple in how it plays. You basically only use one button in the game and then an analog stick. You turn in and you press A, but you're going to have lightning fast reflexes in this game to really compete because this game is incredibly challenging. It is intense, you never know what's coming, and with you going at crazy high speeds, it is quite a rush. If you like rhythm games at all, you definitely need to try Thumper, and even if you don't like rhythm games, this one might be worth a try because it is quite fun, and because it's so skill-based, it is extremely rewarding. Nosia is probably one of the most unique games on this list. This game is described as a sci-fi social deduction RPG in which you will engage in discussion with a variety of unique characters with the aim of identifying the Nosia among the group. Yet right away that might sound a little similar to a game that has exploded in recent years, being Among Us. But Nosia is actually a single-player game where you play in a time loop. The Nosia is basically an alien that can masquerade as one of the humans on a ship and kills a player each and every night. That's where the fun and mystery begins, though, as you go into these 5-round debates and you can accuse and defend the different characters to try to find the Nosia. To mix things up, though, characters do have unique abilities in this game. There are several character abilities, such as Guardian Angel to protect someone from the Nosia at night. There's also an engineer that can report on one individual on whether or not they're a Nosia. This all takes place within a time loop, so it can be a little repetitive, but the characters and gameplay are interesting enough to pursue the true ending. And here I have a game that's just a little bit different than some of the others on this list, being The House in Fata Morgana. And the reason for that is because there's not really much in the way of gameplay in this game, because this is actually a visual novel. So right away, if you're not really interested in reading a lot of dialogue, then you're probably not gonna want to play this game. But if you are looking for just an absolute superb story, then you need to check this game out. This game is about a cursed house where various tragedies has happened in the past. This is then told through various stories, and it just knows how to convey feelings in a realistic way that captivates its audience, and in return, it has you absolutely engrossed in its enthralling and overarching story. The writing in this game is just so effortlessly done. The soundtrack adds to its delivery, and the atmosphere is just drenched around you throughout this game. So while no, it doesn't necessarily have anything in terms of gameplay, if you're looking for a good story, then you absolutely need to check out The House in Fata Morgana. I've moved several times throughout my life, and I can honestly tell you every single time it has been just truly awful. So that's why I'm just as surprised as you that I'm including a game unpacking on this list. Quite frankly, that's what you do in this game. You play as an unseen protagonist and you unpack several items in various different rooms throughout their life. And we'll kind of get back to that here in just a moment, but somehow they took this terrible process and they made it into a zen and relaxing experience. That's already impressive on its own. But what's interesting about this game is actually the story. You wouldn't really think about it, but each one of these rooms in a person's life, it tells a story. As you watch this person's different evolutions of life, it's something very easy to relate to, and it actually has a strong story hidden behind its puzzle gameplay. I'm genuinely surprised about this, but Unpacking actually is a good, relaxing, and zen game that also tells a good story in a unique way. Speaking of being surprised, I'm actually a little shocked that more people aren't talking about Spelunky 2, especially considering the popularity of the first game. It's almost as if people just don't realize that this game is out, and that is such a shame because Spelunky 2 is just as good as the first game, if not even better. This once again is an extremely difficult roguelike platformer with randomly generated levels. And when I say it is extremely difficult, I mean you are going to die, and you are going to die a lot. This game can be very punishing, but it never really feels cheap. There are several different biomes in this game, and with each biome, you kind of have to learn a set of rules. What does each tile and enemy do, and what type of traps lays ahead? And once you start to figure that out, you then use that precision platforming, and you just kind of plan ahead until you can make it to the end. Yes, it is challenging, but it's also very rewarding. Over the years, we've gotten some good sports RPGs, but here recently, we got one of my favorites being Dodgeball Academia. This game was such a surprise, and it's probably one of the reasons that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this game, but this is actually probably one of the most likable games that's released in 2021. The first thing you're probably going to notice is its colorful, vibrant art style that almost resembles old cartoons. It really pops off the screen, but it also has some surprisingly deep RPG elements. Yes, this is a dodgeball game where you can build a 3-player team, but each character is unique and has their own moves. You have regular moves, charge attacks, special abilities, and you can learn even more abilities as you level up throughout the game. You can also alter stats, and yeah, this is a legitimate RPG. I also think it has an entertaining but absurd story with over-the-top characters. This game just oozes charm. The Nintendo Switch isn't necessarily known for shooters per se, but here we have Dusk, and this automatically goes down as one of the best shooters available on the Switch. This is a fast-paced 90s style first-person shooter similar to games like Doom or Wolfenstein, and this isn't just some cheap knockoff or something like that. No, this actually stands toe-to-toe with the best of the best. This game is fast-paced and always keeps the intensity on high, the gun mechanics and movement feels excellent, and the level design is outstanding. Dusk has everything that you want in a shooter like this, and it oozes atmosphere with that horror-like vibe. This game is quite grotesque and dark, not only with its environment, but also with its enemy typings. There's a lot of well-designed enemies in this game, not just from an artistic standpoint, but also with its gameplay. You will have to approach each enemy differently. And what all has this kind of wrapped together is that it actually feels really good to play on the Nintendo Switch. Its standard controls are really nice, but it also has gyro just in case you like to play shooters that way instead. And here I have The Wild at Heart, which immediately grabbed me for its fantastically realized world, its intriguing story, its beautiful art style, and its unique gameplay, which is inspired by the heavily underappreciated Pikmin. This is like a mix of Pikmin and an adventure type of game. There is some Metroidvania aspects to it as you progress throughout the game. By unlocking different Pikmin-like characters, you can actually travel to your next destination. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that its strong suit is its combat in specific, but rather it's with its puzzle elements and the world itself. You can really tell that the developer here put a lot of love into the world of The Wild at Heart. And yes, while this game does have similar mechanics to Pikmin, it still feels completely different all at the same time. And here at the #1 spot, I have Death's Door, which is quietly one of the best games that has released in 2021. While it's easy to see where Death's Door's inspiration has come from, it just does everything so masterfully. This isn't just some top-down like Zelda experience. No, this is just flat out a good game that stands tall all on its own. It has a well-designed, interconnected world with a lot of atmosphere. It's got various puzzles to keep your mind busy. And then there's the combat, which is where it really separates itself. It's not necessarily overly complex, nor does it need to be. You basically have your melee attack, a ranged attack, and then also a roll. Combining all three feels nice and fluid, and it also strikes a nice balance in terms of its long-range and short-range attacks. In order to replenish your ammo in this game, you actually have to use your melee attack, which keeps the intensity on high. It's just a smartly designed game, whether that be with its gameplay, its world design, its puzzles, or even its bosses. I'd say the only thing that I wish that they would have maybe done a little bit different is to have given you a map in this game, but beyond that, this is an excellent game that I would highly recommend. Anyways, though, that's it for this list, but if I missed any of your favorite games, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.